Hello there, folks. Nice to see you. My name is Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. This video is going to be a little reminder video, or a sort of bringing together of the nodes, the eclipses, and the new moon in transit. Much has been made about the eclipses for very good reason. And I'm just going to move my picture back over here. There's a very good reason for it. You know, in evolutionary astrology and in classical Vedic astrology, the nodes are kind of like the big picture. You know, even in evolutionary astrology, Jeff Wolf Green puts high emphasis on Pluto, and the nodes are the hugest evolutionary arcs. But of course, in jyotish, the nodes are the main deal. And there's lots of ways to describe what the nodes are doing as we move through life and as we evolve through life. A huge aspect of it is the maturation of the nodes. And I suggest you check out my planetary maturation video to get a real good sense of the maturing that's going on with the nodes, because they are a graha. So the nodes mature just like all the other grahas. In jyotish, there are 7 luminaries that have to do with the 7 luminaries have to do with the 6 chakras, and they are, each of the luminaries owns a house: Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn. Each one of these owns a sign and therefore owns one of the houses in the rising sign. Now, Rahu and Ketu don't own a sign, at least by the way that I, as a neo-Vedic practitioner, do things. Some people have said that I think it's Scorpio rules Ketu and Aquarius rules Rahu. That's kind of a debated thing in astrology, and the teachers that I follow don't generally abide by that, including most relevantly Ernst Wilhelm. Although I won't put words in his mouth, but I believe that he, my teacher Ryan Kirksack, who kind of got a lot of his stuff from Ernst, was never too sure that they wanted to put all of their eggs into that basket. So the point here is that the nodes are one of the grahas, though. They are considered 2 of the 9 grahas, except they're different from the luminaries. They don't own signs. They are called the shadow grahas. And so they are a very important key element of our astrological beingness. And that's why they mature just like all the other planets mature. Rahu matures at 43. Ketu matures at 48. And that period in our 40s is one of the most important moments in the human life. Again, see more about that in the planetary maturations video. Now, how to describe what's going on with the nodes? You know, there's obviously natal things to describe about the nodes. Oftentimes when I'm doing a chart for someone, I'm just going to talk about, okay, you have the south node in this sign. Where's Ketu's lord? Ketu being the south node. Where's the lord? What planets are close to the node? You know, and then I would ask the person, do you resonate with the node is in Cancer, the south node is in Cancer? That means that you've done a lot of Cancer things, you think you've mastered it, but it's not perfect. You need to use the north node in Capricorn to truly integrate the two and to reveal what you thought was right but what was actually wrong about your south node. That is an ongoing narrative. Rahu brings us clarity about what we thought was right about our Ketu. This is just something that's beyond transits, beyond anything. It's something that's just an unfolding evolutionary narrative that's unfolding for all of us every minute of every day, really. Now, the nodes themselves, if we were to talk about the nodes in transit, and this is kind of what this whole part of this video series is all about. The nodes, the eclipses, and the new moon in transit. Now, there are sort of 3 arcs that we're going to describe You've already seen me talk a little bit about this in my Ganesha long video. Ganesha synthesis and the nodes. Now this video is intended to kind of squash that together in a shorter version and sort of bring the nodes in transit together, along with the eclipses and the new moon transits. Now, if you watch my Ganesha video, the whole essence of Ganesha is synthesis, where no matter what, if the new moon is close to the south node, or if the new moon is transiting close to your north node, you will always be able to, the elephant's head can keep moving if you understand that both Rahu and Ketu have a purpose. There's nowhere to stand in evolution. We're always moving towards one and then the other. Now this is true every year. The new moon goes around month by month by month by month by month. When the new moon hits the transiting north node, we get an eclipse. And so this is what we're explaining here, right? You can kind of see, I'll explain this in a minute, but we see our little moon goes around and then it comes back together with the sun again. So then the moon goes around again, and then there's a new moon on the north node. Then the moon goes around again, then there's a new moon in the next sign, there's a new moon in the next sign the next month there's another one, next month there's another one, next month there's another one, and then we have the south node eclipse, right? So this is something that is, you know, happening. That's like a once a year sort of phenomenon going on there, right? And once, really twice a year, the new moon is going to touch one of the nodes and create an eclipse. Now, this is a small scale thing happening. You know, there's two big eclipse events once a year. Really, though, each time the new moon comes close to one of the nodes and it's in the same sign as the transiting node, the new moon and the full moon both have the potential to be an eclipse. So there's usually 4 eclipses in a year, right? A new moon and a full moon at the south node, and then a new moon and a full moon at the north node, right? So as the new moon is kind of like there are intentions for this lunar month. So this is why there are 3 tiers of Ganesha synthesis, where we have to pay attention to these cycles of power of that we kind of have, where we're either, the new moon is happening closer to Ketu, or we're kind of in our fortress, we're dealing with ourselves. Then the new moon, eventually, month by month by month by month, it goes towards the north node. That's, you know, where there's gold over them there in them hills. You know, we've been stuck in the Ketu fortress for past lives and for our childhood. The north node eclipse is always a point of like a karmic tar pit. It's a karmic suck hole where we're dealing with the dark unknown that we've never explored in our psyche. So the Rahu, the north node eclipses are very important for everybody. Now, as the new moon goes around, the new moon is going close to the transiting north node and south node. And it also goes close to our natal north node and south node. Those are 2 different arcs. And what really has a big hit is when the transiting north node and south node line up close to our natal north node and south node. So there's 3 different elements here. You know, as we can kind of see, all 3 of these elements are key players in our in the movements of evolutionary narrative through the nodes. It's the transiting new moon on the transiting nodes. There's the transiting new moon on the natal nodes, and then there's the nodes themselves in transit, moving to our natal nodes. So I'm going to bring it all together. I don't want this to be too confusing, but there's a few things I want to break down, including, right from the beginning, what exactly is this eclipse phenomenon? So let's get started here and just kind of look a little bit. I've got a little bit of diagrams here. There's only so much that can be explained astronomically. This is our title page video. So this is the one example that you'll often see of the nodes. It's kind of hard to describe. The Earth would be in the middle. The sun has its path around. And then the moon, the brown color is the moon. Actually, be going this way. The moon has its spin like this. And of course, as we can see, it goes up above the ecliptic, right? The sun is in a perfect circle. That is, the Earth revolves around the sun in a perfect circular orbit. And this gives the impression that the sun has this perfect orbit, although it is slightly slanted. So the sun appears to go north and south. That's another conversation, I guess you could say. But really, the moon, the moon has been called the rabbit because the moon bounces in the sky. So this brown circle is the moon. It goes around the Earth. And every year, basically, what's going to happen? Let's say this is 2023. Let's say the node was in Taurus and Scorpio. Then excuse my crude circle here. In 2024, the nodes were in Aries and Libra. 2025, the nodes are in Pisces, Virgo. 2026, the nodes are in Aquarius, Leo. So this is this kind of thing that's revolving like this. Now, as we've seen here, this is like a year, several years long, right? 2023, 2024, 25, 25, 2026. So that's like 4 years that the nodes are moving in the signs. Now that's a longer span. We can also look at this in the shorter span because the new moon itself is kind of almost like a mini eclipse in a way. That's why I call these concentric circles. So just to give you a picture, again, you guys have already seen this. The moon goes all the way around, and then by the time the moon comes back, the sun has moved over one sign, right? Then the moon goes all the way around, and then when the new moon occurs at the transiting north node, then there's a north node eclipse. Then the new moon goes to the next month. Next month is another new moon. Next month is another new moon. Next month. And then finally, 6 months later, there's a new moon on the south node, and that makes the south node eclipse. And that's a month, that's a 6 month to 6 month process going from one node to the other with the new moon. So here's just a little example of what this looks like on Astrodienst. Just 3 panels here. August new moon in Leo, and that was kind of in trine, really, in a little ways, to the Rahu in Aries. At the present time, the north node, around this year, the north node is in Aries at 7 degrees, and of course that means the south node is in Libra. It doesn't show it on Astro Theme, right? So this is August 4th. Next month, about 30 days later, we see the north node is still here in Aries, and the new moon is occurring not in Leo, but a month later, now it's in Virgo, at about 10 degrees. 1 month later, the new moon is happening with the sun and moon together are in Libra. And this is about 10 degrees. That's pretty close to the south node, because we know the north node is at 6 degrees Aries. That means the south node is at 6 degrees Aries. When the new moon is that close to the south, to one of the nodes, we get an eclipse, right? So this is how these eclipses kind of happen. So the new moon's transits going around are, the transiting eclipses. The new moon and the transiting nodes are what make up the eclipses. And that is going to be what we call C. We're going to skip there just to go right to it because it's, you can see that's the same thing going on here. So here's my chart. It's funny, I've got, So this is my chart. I'm a Leo rising. I've got the south node in Cancer. I've got the north node in Capricorn. And as we can see, the new moon transited into Leo in August, right? So we can see that it's moving towards the transiting south node, Ketu. this, as we've shown this year, the transiting north node is in Aries, which is square Cancer and Capricorn. So the north node's in Aries, the south node's in Ketu. The new moon in Leo is up here, and it's moving towards it. Then the new moon in September is going to happen in Virgo. Then the new moon in October is going to happen in Libra. That's a south node eclipse. And of course, that south node eclipse is going to be very significant to me because it's square to my natal nodes. This is what I want you guys to start thinking about, is that the transiting eclipses have a relationship to your natal north and south node, right? Now, this is a very short term. The next month, the new moon is going to happen in Scorpio in November. New moon's going to happen in Sagittarius in December. And then there's going to be a new moon in January, probably, in the sign of Capricorn. And the new moon in Capricorn is always an important thing for me because, of course, we're right in the peak of my Rahu, right? So we can see as the new moon moves towards my natal Rahu that there is going to be what we call, it's moving into Rahu land. Rahu land is basically when the new moon is closer to Rahu than it is to Ketu. You know, we can kind of see, this is where these quadrants are coming from that I'm always talking about, right? When the new moon is in, see A and D, this is when the new moon is happening in closer to Rahu. Then it'll eventually square my natal, the natal node or the transiting node. And then it'll, see, we'd see it in B. So this is when the transiting new moon brings cyclical karma relevant to your natal nodes. In quadrant D is what we're talking about presently. It's when it's in Ketu, it's in Rahu land. It's moving up to the peak of Rahu. At which point, like we've just shown here, when the new moon is happening in January, and it happens in the sign of Capricorn, that is when it's going to be over my natal north node. Of course, at this time, that will also be square to the transiting nodes, because the transiting nodes are square to my natal nodes at this time. And this is an important time. Then, of course, the new moon is going to happen in February of the next year, and that's going to be the new moon in Aquarius. Then there'll be a new moon in Pisces, and then there'll be another new moon in Aries. By that time, Pisces might actually be the new transiting. That might be where transiting north nodes are, but I digress. So we can see here that the new moon does slowly, month by month, it moves along the natal chart, it moves along the transiting nodes, and it moves along your natal nodes, right? So we could see from B here. This is Dustin's chart. The new moon is here, and at this time in August, the new moon is closer to Ketu, right? I have Ketu in Cancer, and the new moon in Leo is still in Ketu land. It's not going to be until the new moon goes into Virgo. It's getting closer. It's closer to the square. Then the new moon is in the south node eclipse in October. And then now, next month in November, the new moon happens in Scorpio, and it's getting closer to my natal Rahu. So we can see these three different relevant things going on. There's the transiting new moon to the transiting nodes, the transiting new moon to my natal nodes, and then there's the transiting nodes to my natal nodes, right? So as we can see here, I've given the example. This is the transiting nodes bringing significant karma to my own natal nodes. So my natal nodes, again, the south nodes in Cancer, north nodes in Capricorn. This year, the north node and south node are transiting square my natal nodes. Now we know as time goes on that these transiting points of the north and south node are going to move backwards along my chart, right? We can see right now Rahu is transiting Aries, which is my 9th house. And then, let's call this 2023. Next year, around 2024, the north node eclipse is going to be happening in the sign of Pisces. Then 1 year after that, the north node eclipse is going to be happening in the sign of Aquarius. And then finally, around 2026, when I'm around 35, 36 years old, the north node eclipse is going to happen in Capricorn, probably around December, January. And it's at that point that I will be experiencing my north node return around age 35, 36. And we know from my evolutionary script video, if you've been watching my evolutionary calendar, this is the combination of age-based astrological patterns. At 36 years old, a whole bunch of stuff comes together. Saturn matures, very importantly, but just as importantly is the second nodal return. This is a very key time in life because, as we know, we're always stuck in Ketu, and when the north node eclipses, remember that's like this karmic tar pit. It's like this suck hole that's advancing karma forward. When the north node eclipses are happening in the sign that your natal north node is in, there's a peak that happens there, right? This is why we have these quadrants that I keep talking about. Quadrant D is leading up because the nodes go backwards. Quadrant D, it's like, let's say this is, my north node, the north node eclipse happening in Aries is at the square. Then 2024, the north node eclipse happens in Pisces. Then 2025, the north node eclipse happens in Aquarius. Then 2026, the north node is happening at the peak, at my natal north node. And this is the peak of Rahu land, as I keep talking about. They're lined up in a way where the Rahu is going to bring out from the churning ocean some of the great true desires that have been inside my soul that have just always been offline because Ketu had been operating in a lumbering, sleeping way. It's kind of what happens. Up to 36, Ketu operates in a lumbering, sleeping kind of way. Then at 36 years old, we experience our second nodal return, and it taps Rahu, which in turn taps Ketu, because Rahu and Ketu are like the same thing. That's why they're axiomatic. They wake each other up upon waking up. So the age 36 is going to be very important to me. It's very important for everybody. And then, of course, after age 36, everybody goes into, the north node is next going to happen for me in Sagittarius, and then it's going to happen in Scorpio that next year, and then there's going to be another north node eclipse in Libra, which is going to be square to my natal nodes, and it keeps going on. After that, the north node eclipse are happening in quadrants B and C. And that's more of this Ketu land, Ketu territory. It's about release, necessary self-reflection and healing, right? So that's going to be, at 36, there's the north node peak. Then at 40, there's another square. Then around 45, there's the north node is, the nodal opposition occurs. And each of those has, when the north node eclipse is happening in Rahu land, you're bringing out Rahu. When the north node eclipses happen in Ketu land, closer to your natal Ketu, then it's bringing out rooted karma. And both these can be painful and annoying. It's like a kid, when you're dealing with the nodes, imagine a kid who is going to summer camp. Summer camp is Rahu. Now they've been at home. They've been sick of home, sick of mom, sick of dad. It's just way too much of all this. This is all I've ever known. I'm getting sick of it. I want to go out to summer camp. And what happens when they go out to summer camp? If you're anything like me, I got Ketu and Cancer. I went out to summer camp and I got homesick. It was very difficult. It was very different, and I hated it. I got there, and for 2 weeks I was just sore, and I was just missed my mom. I'm a mama's boy, and it's just so different from what I was used to. Rahu land, summer camp is just so different. But you spend your time at Rahu summer camp, and when you finally come, eventually you come back to Ketu land again. And it's a relief at some level because now I'm out back from summer camp. But then 1 month into being back home, you're thinking about it and you're like, you know, it was actually sick out there in summer camp. Home sucks. Now I'm sick of being home again, and now I want to be out in summer camp again. Then you go through school, and then eventually you go out to summer camp again, and it's the same thing. Every time you go into Rahu land, it's intense. It's summer camp. You get homesick. It's not what you're used to operating through. And this is what happens at 36. You leave home, so to speak. Your life becomes, what is my summer camp? What am I really looking to do? And at 36, that comes on. And it's like, you know, that's a time when you fully start to let go of the childish ways that you've been. So 36 is a very important time. But these nodal returns are these exquisitely important times. So it's very important to see when the North Node eclipses are happening close to your natal Rahu, because that is a time when you are making the most of your exploration of the unknown, of summer camp, of getting away from what you're familiar with. Then when the North Node comes to Ketu, then you're dealing with that. Now you're going to hear more about this metaphor. I still plan on doing a nodal quadrants video to squeeze in a little bit more about this about these nodes. So for now, you know, I hope that I did justice in talking about these 3 layers, right? Even when the new moon is happening by transit, we've got a similar thing happening to this story, right? Let's see here. So this is the transiting new moon, right? It was close to my Ketu, and I was kind of at home, right? Now September comes along. There's going to be, you know, the new moon in October, and then the new moon in November, the new moon in December. By this time, the new moon is coming towards, and remember, this is just a month-by-month thing. The new moon is now in Rahu land. Now I'm in mini summer camp. Every single year, the new moon is coming towards Rahu, and we're in summer camp, and then it eventually goes back towards Ketu the next year, basically, right? So there's a yearly cycle of this home Ketu and summer camp Rahu. And then there's the 18-year cycle, the North Node. The North Node eclipses moving closer to your natal Rahu or your natal Ketu. And then, of course, the third one is also them in the new moon going towards the transiting, you know, moving towards the eclipse point. So all 3 of these are important. All 3 of these has something to do with our experience of being at home or out of ourselves in Rahu land. And it's always going to feel uncomfortable, just like this kid going to summer camp. That's why we have this whole Ganesha metaphor, right? Rewatch the Ganesha video if you want to get a sense of the fact that the elephant's head never stops moving. We're embedded in these confrontations with our natal nodes because life is always going in cycles. And as usual, Ganesha's essential message is that the karma of this moment, whether you're at summer camp or whether you're at home, it's going to be partly painful and partly blissful. But this is us shedding our desire to stick to one or the other. And so it is necessary that we go through this. And those are lucky and without obstruction who understand this. You know, Ganesha is considered the god of obstacles. You don't pray to Ganesha and say, please make the boulder go away. You pray to Ganesha to reckon with yourself and ask, what does this moment mean for me? What does it mean that I'm homesick and I'm not at home anymore? I know when I go back home, I'm going to want to be out here. So I'm not happy either way unless I focus, I'm present with this present moment, and I am meditative, and I am embracing what the universe as a lover, what reality as a cosmic lover is giving to me in this moment. Because I don't need to be fully in control. It's much easier to go with the flow of life. Mercury, you're wiping the mirror away so that there's only the pure, true reality, the simple truth of reality as it is. Take away your attachment to what you think reality what you think you want reality to be. And reality will be perfect. You're homesick at summer camp, but at least you get to enjoy summer camp. Then when you're at home, you're wishing you're at summer camp, but now you can do the things you got to do in Ketu land. Both are important. So keep this in mind as you explore your nodal transits. Track them. I recommend that you track them and you pay attention. As the new moon comes closer to your natal Rahu, see if you can feel like you're at summer camp and there's something blooming from the unknown at that time. Then as the new moon comes towards Ketu, see that you're back at home. What kind of regeneration can you get out of that moment? It happens once a year, and it also happens in an 18-year cycle. And it's the same thing. It's the same cycle. Now we're going to get a little bit more detail about these quadrants in my next video, the nodal quadrants video. I hope you guys enjoy. Until then, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments. Tell me what you thought about this video when you can. Take care, folks.